الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إنه تعالى جل عن الشبيه والمثيل والند والنظير. ونشهد أن سيدنا وسندنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وحبيب ربنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبده ورسوله صفيه وخليله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه الغر الميامين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد سمع الله قول التي تجادلك في زوجها وتشتكي إلى الله والله يسمع تحاوركما إن الله سميع بصير. وقال تعالى: ألم تر أن الله يعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض ما يكون من نجوى ثلاثة إلا هو رابعهم ولا خمسة إلا هو سادسهم ولا أدنى من ذلك ولا أكثر إلا هو معهم أينما كانوا ثم ينبئهم بما عملوا يوم القيامة إن الله بكل شيء عليم. وقال تعالى: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, we begin with the praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by sending blessings and salutations upon the noblest of messengers, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his companions and his followers till the end of times. One of the greatest gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given human beings is that Allah has given us something called bayan, right? Ar-Rahman allama al-Qur'an khalaqa al-insan allamahu al-bayan. This is the mercy of Allah. Ar-Rahman, Allah is the most merciful. What is His manifestation of His mercy? Allamahu al-Quran. He taught you the Quran, right? The Quran is a mercy from Allah. He gave us the book as out of His infinite mercy. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ وَعَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانَ خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانَ. He created man and He taught man bayan. He taught man communication, right? Bayan is the concept of being able to take multiple words, put them together to express what you feel inside, right? It is something that the human being has been given. No other species from Allah has been given this, right? No other species created by Allah has been given bayan. In fact, right, the Quran tells us there are three unique things about human beings that no one else has, right? No other species has. Number one, the concept of clothing. We are a modest nation, right? Allah has told us you are a modest species. You are meant to cover yourself, right? The more you cover, the more closer you are to the sunnah, right? In fact, if you study the reason why the Prophet ﷺ would actually wear a long garment with something underneath is because every part of his body then would be covered twice. Every part of his body would be covered twice by two layers of clothing, right? And this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The more you cover yourself, the more modest you are in your clothing, the closest you are to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This itself is not sunnah, right? This traditional garb is not sunnah itself. Right? The concept of being modest in your clothing is sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So the first thing that the Quran tells us that no other species has is Allah has given the human being clothing. Right? Allah gave us a concept of modesty, a concept of haya, right? a concept of shamefulness. Right? That we feel ashamed at exposing ourselves to others. And the second thing Allah has given us is bayan, the concept of communication. No other species can communicate like the human being can, right? Other animals will vocalize, right? The parrot will say things, right? But it doesn't internalize them. It's not able to say, it cannot put two sentences together or two words together and come up with its own sentence, right? You can teach the parrot how to say, hello. You can teach the parrot to say, how are you? You teach the parrot the whole dictionary if you want, but it will not be able to come up with its own sentence on its own. It will only be able to imitate what you tell it, right? Similarly with other animals, you'll hear dogs barking, cats meowing, right? Wolves howling. All of these are just sounds. They're not language. It's not bayan, right? They can make a sound. A sound means one thing, right? When a wolf howls, it means one thing, right? Depending on the sound. But it's not a vocalization of bayan. It's not communication because it cannot put multiple sounds together to create a unique set of sounds that which will mean something unique, right? Which only the human being can do, right? And so Allah has given us bayan. The third thing that Allah has given us is the concept of civilization. We are the only species that is able to build and barter, right? We can trade with one another. We can build we can build houses, right? And we can advance in our civilization, right? We have a concept of law and order. Civilization requires law, requires order. It requires the use of everyone dealing with each other, right? No matter what other species species you look at, there's no concept of civilization, right? Birds will not have a police or a law and order in their civilization, right? They won't have a bartering system in their civilization. Each bird will wake up in the morning, it will go and collect food and come back and feed its children. And then the next day it will do the same thing, and the next day it will do the same thing. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he would see the bird, he would say, "Wallah, I wish I would have been made a bird, because if I had been a bird, my life would have been so simple, and I wouldn't be responsible and burdened by the responsibility that Allah has given the human being." And so what is the responsibility that Allah has given the human being? Allah gave us intellect, Allah gave us bayan, Allah gave us, He gave us communication, He gave us, civilization. But with that comes also greater responsibility, and that responsibility is the belief in Allah and to understand Allah and to abide by His laws, right? إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ. The Quran says that Allah had given the responsibility, right? Allah had given responsibility to the creation of the skies and the mountains. فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا. They decided not to take it, right? They decided not to take it, meaning that, but man took it, meaning that Allah is making us mukallaf, Allah is making us responsible. We are to believe. If other animals do not believe, they're not held accountable, right? Other species do not believe, they're not held accountable in the eyes of Allah. We believe that every creation of Allah, right, beside the human being and the jinn kind, on the Day of Judgment, they will cease to exist, they will become dirt, and they will cease to exist. There is no heaven for them, there is no hell for them. The human being has been given intellect, and so it's going to have the human being is responsible. The human being can think for its own, and so it has a choice to make in life, right? Whether to obey Allah or not to obey Allah. And so based upon the choices that we do in this world, based upon the things that we do in this world, we will have to answer before Allah. And that's why we have a concept of paradise and hellfire. It's because we've been given this intellect. And so one of the greatest things that Allah has given us, the greatest blessings that Allah has given us, is communication, right? It's a concept of being able to talk and understand one another, right? And this is a concept that many of us often overlook, right? Communication consists of three things. If you actually study psychology, they say communication consists of two things, and I added a third one to it, right? Communication, number one, exists within yourself, right? That you need to learn how to communicate with yourself. When your body tells you something, you should learn how to communicate it. And communication is also with each other, right? For us, for Muslims, communication is with Allah as well, right? We believe that Allah, you can communicate with Allah, right? It is our belief that Allah is all hearing, and we can communicate with Allah. And so this concept of communication, we have to learn how to communicate correctly according to the Sunnah, right? We have to learn how to communicate according to the prophetic teachings. We have many different examples from the Quran that talk about the communication between people, right? The communication between genders, communication between husband and wife, communication between family members, right? We gave a khutbah maybe a couple of weeks ago talking about the responsibilities that you have for your family. One of the biggest responsibilities that you have toward your family is to learn how to communicate with them correctly, right? Learning how to communicate with them correctly, learning the etiquettes of communication, learning the etiquettes of discussing issues, right? When scholars would discuss with one another, they had a certain etiquette, they had a certain way of communication. And so we have a communication from Allah, and we break it down into three things. Number one is our relationship with Allah, right? We need to learn how to communicate with Allah. How do we communicate with Allah? We make dua to Allah, right? Of course, we know this, right? It is part of our aqidah. Our communication with Allah means two things. Number one, we understand that Allah is always hearing. He hears everything in this world, right? Our apprehension of Allah, our awareness of Allah, this is part of our aqidah. But number two is that our responsibility to turn back to Allah and communicate with Allah on a daily basis. We need to learn how to make dua to Allah, learn how to communicate with Allah. Allah hears every call that we make, right? We are told that every dua that you make, you're guaranteed an answer from Allah. You're always guaranteed an answer from Allah. Either Allah will accept your dua, right? Allah will accept your dua, or either now, or Allah will accept it later on. And if He doesn't accept it, then Allah will give you something else in return, because He knows the dua that you made for, the thing that you made dua for was something that was harmful for you, right? And so, for example, if you make dua, Allah get me into so-and-so med school or so-and-so law school, right? Maybe Allah will accept your dua. Maybe He might not accept your dua, but He'll get you into a different law school because, that law school may be better for you. Or maybe Allah may not get you into law school, but because it is not beneficial for you at that time. So every dua, no matter what, from Allah is always accepted, right? Allah is always hearing, Allah is always accepting. There's a poem actually in the Mathnawi, right? Mathnawi is a book written by Jalaluddin Rumi. He was a famous saint, right? It's studied all over the world. Non-Muslims study this book till today, right? There are PhDs written on this book. And so he has a poem in there. He says a man would make dua to Allah his whole life, and he would never hear Allah, right? We don't have sensory perception of Allah. We cannot hear Allah, right? We believe in Allah we believe in the existence of Allah, but we don't have sensory perception of Allah. And so one day Shaitan decided to disguise himself as a human being, and so he walks by this man's house. He hears him making dua, so he knocks on his door. Rumi says he knocks on his door, and the man says, "You've been making dua to Allah for 60 years. Have you ever heard labbaik from Allah? Have you ever heard the words of Allah? Have you ever heard Allah?" Right? And so the man says, "No, of course I haven't heard Allah." But because of that statement, that Shaitan made in the form of a human being, this man starts to get doubts. He starts to have doubts, and he spends the whole day doubting himself. Am I really making dua for a reason? Is there a purpose of me making dua? Why am I making dua? Right? And so then he goes to sleep at nighttime, and at nighttime he has a dream, and that dream is that he's talking to Allah, and Allah tells him, right? The way I answer your du'as, I kept you on my straight path. The way I answered your du'as is I always did what was best for you in life. The way I answered your du'as is I made sure that you were healthy and wealthy and wise throughout your life, right? I took care of you in your life. The fact that you keep on turning back to me is a sign that I am returning your du'as, right? So we don't have a sensory perception of communication with Allah, but we still understand that we must communicate with Allah. We must make dua to Allah. We must learn to communicate with Allah, right? And the Quran talks about communication, right? We understand from our aqidah point of view that Allah hears everything, right? Sometimes we're walking by people and we say something in a very passive, aggressive, or offensive remark towards someone, but we say it so quietly so they can't hear us. But Allah can hear us, right? قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا وَتَشْتَكِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. Allah heard the woman who came to the Prophet to complain about her husband. The Quran says a woman came to the Prophet one time to go, and she whispered to the Prophet ﷺ about her situation at home. Something happened between her and her husband, and so she came to the Prophet ﷺ to complain. She said, "Ya Rasulullah, this is what happened." And so the Prophet ﷺ said, I understand your complaints, but a divorce is a divorce. You know, it's irrevocable, right? You are separated, you are divorced because of what he did. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, I understand your complaint, but she whispered it to the Prophet ﷺ. But Allah revealed the verses, "Wallahu yasma'u tahawurakuma." Allah understands and Allah hears your conversation. Allah hears your communication. And because of that, Allah then revealed certain verses that in this case, they were able to reconcile their marriage. And this is a specific scenario, right? The surah talks about a specific scenario between husband and wife. But nonetheless, our communication with Allah is heard. We have to internalize this belief that our communication with Allah is absolutely heard, right? We need to learn how to make dua multiple times throughout the day. And then we need to learn how to communicate with our bodies. We need to learn how to understand our bodies, right? Psychologists say two forms of communication. You communicate with yourself, right? There's a saying, right? And that saying is, I can't even hear myself think, right? It's a proverb, right? I can't hear myself think. Why? Because we communicate with our bodies, right? Our body communicates with us. We feel pain, it's a sign, it's a communication, it's a form of communication to us, right? But nowadays we live in a world where we forget to even communicate with our body, right? Spiritually speaking, because of this specific factor, it ruins our spiritual relationship with Allah as well. When we forget to learn how to communicate with our bodies, right? We forget to learn how to communicate with Allah. There's a relationship between the two. We live in a fast-paced environment. We get here maybe 1 or 2 minutes before Jummah, or maybe the khutbah starting. We get here after the khutbah starts. Prayer finishes, we bounce. We have to run, right? We get to work. As soon as work finishes, we have to get home. And we're always living in a fast-paced society. And our society tells us the more busy you are, the more important you are, right? That society tells us if your calendar is full, that's a sign of you being important, right? It's a sign of you being busy. And sometimes we fill our calendars with useless things, even though we don't even need to fill them up with certain things, right? But nonetheless, our society tells us the more busy you are, the more important you are. But in reality, it ruins our relationship with Allah, right? When we forget to learn how to think about things, right? Quran tells us to ponder. The Quran tells us to ponder over the creation of Allah. What does pondering mean? It means communicating with yourself, thinking about your thoughts, right? Your thoughts are your communication with your brain. When you feel something in your body, it's a communication with your brain. When you feel pain in your body, it's a communication with your brain. Nowadays, there's people who go to work and they're living in such a fast-paced environment, they faint in work, right? And doctors, there was a story about, the Huffington Post, the woman who started the Huffington Post, right? Ariana Huffington. What happened with her? She developed this big business empire. She came into work one day and she fainted, right? And doctors spent like 6 months finding out what was wrong with her. They were doing neurological exams and different type of exams. Find out at the end of the day, all she was tired because she never had time to even sit down and rest. She never listened to the aching in her body. She never communicated with her body, right? And so we need to learn when we feel something, right? We need to think about those feelings, right? We need to understand them, right? When we have thoughts, we ponder over the creation of Allah. That is communicating with our body, right? Our bodies have responsibilities toward us, right? Part of that is communication. And the third aspect, or the second aspect according to psychologists, is that we communicate with others. We need to learn how to communicate with others. The human being, right, in its nature has two desires. Number one, when it comes to communication, right, it has many desires. When it comes to communication, it has two desires. It has a desire to express itself. People like to talk, right? Sometimes we say thousands, if not millions of words and sometimes in a day, right, or in a week. And so the human being loves to express itself, and the human being loves to be heard as well. The human being loves to be heard as well, right? It's easy for me to say this standing at on the minbar, but the human being has these two desires. Number one, it loves to express itself, and it loves to be heard, right? You have little kids who will come up to you, right, and they will want to talk to you, right? I have a 6-month-old daughter now, right? She will make as much noise as she can when no one is around her. As soon as you come in the room, she's quiet. She doesn't want to communicate with anyone. She just wants to be acknowledged that her presence is there, right? She wants you to acknowledge her presence. As long as you're holding her, or as long as you are in the room with her, she will be quiet, right? She has that innate nature in her that she wants to be heard. She wants her presence to be known by others. We have these two desires. We have the desire to express ourselves, we have the desire to talk, and we have the desire to be heard. But sometimes when someone expresses us, we don't hear them properly, right? We don't communicate with them properly. If we learn to properly communicate with each other, and that is a separate khutbah for itself. If we learned to properly communicate with each other, we wouldn't have the marital problems that we're having nowadays. Kids have problems with their parents, right? Parents don't understand their kids, right? Because our parents are usually from immigrant countries, and kids are born and raised here. And so there's a divide in communication. If that communication divide went away, there would be a perfect harmony between parents and children. Sometimes we have drama at work or problems at work, right? And all it is simple, effective communication. If we put effective communication in place, all of our problems at work would also be taken care of. Many times it's just misunderstandings. Many times it's just hearing things in a different way or from a different person. And so we need to learn how to effectively communicate. What are the rules of communication? How does the Sunnah talk about communication? How do we talk about communication? That's something else, right? That's a different khutbah, inshallah, later on. But the point of this khutbah is that we learn to internalize that we need to communicate with Allah. We need to communicate with ourselves. Every day, take some time out to understand what you're doing, right, in life. Take some time out to think about the creation of Allah. Take some time out to think about what you're doing with your life, right? What are your goals as a person, right? What are your goals in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? What are your life goals? These are things that we think about. Our body has a responsibility toward us. Part of that responsibility is we learn how to communicate with our body, right? When we feel pain in our body, we go and get it checked out. When we feel something different in our body, when we feel stress in our body, we learn how to remove that stress, right? It is a responsibility of our body. وَإِنَّ لِجَسَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقٌّ. The Prophet ﷺ told Salman, your body has a right upon you, right? Our bodies have rights upon us. This is this right. And the last thing, we need to learn how to communicate with each other. With our family members, we need to learn how to communicate properly, right? And part of communication, in fact, I'll just end with this, inshallah. The biggest factor of communication is language, right? The biggest thing is language. We use language sometimes that person we're talking to doesn't understand. Kids will use certain language that their parents will not understand, right? This is why the Quran, if you study the Quran, the most important part of the Quran is the language of it, right? Arabic is such a beautiful language because through language you're able to communicate properly, right? And there are so many intricacies in the Arabic language. It is the most beautiful language. It has the most intricate, details. If you change the fatha to a dhamma, it completely changes the sentence, right? If you add inna at the beginning of a sentence, it completely changes the meaning of the sentence, right? The dynamic of a sentence. Why are these things in place? So we can learn how to express ourselves properly, right? Communicate with each other properly, right? If we learned English the way, correct English, or learned proper way of communicating in English, then maybe we could express what we want to, what we were trying to express, right? And so we need to learn how to communicate with others. And I think one of the biggest things is learning to effectively communicate is language itself, right? That's a separate khutbah, like I said, for some other time. But for today, let's go home with remembering that we communicate with Allah. We must communicate with Allah, right? We must make dua to Allah. Get in the habit of communicating with Allah. Get in the habit of communicating with ourselves, fulfilling the rights that our body has upon ourselves, and learning how to communicate with the others effectively as well. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanallah al-azim. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من صلى علي واحدة صلى الله عليه بها عشرة اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون أقم الصلاة
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا واعتدلوا. Please straighten the rows, make sure your heels are on the line. Please fill in the gaps. There are plenty of space available in the back left corner. People are coming in, so let's make space for them. Let's fill up the first rows first before going on to the next rows. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة الحطب في جيدها حبل من مسد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.